How did you meet Jimi?
So the first time I encountered Jimi was at Tina's in Dundee, and we were having dinner, and didn't know him, but was just having dinner with some friends. And David from Tina's came to my table and said, "Hey, this guy down there at this table is going to interview with you tomorrow for a job at Wollackenzie." And I looked around, and there was this big monster guy, at least he looked to me like very massive, with his black KGB coat. Found out afterwards there was an old KGB coat, but anyway, very impressive guy. And so I know that I think I shook his hand and just said hi that night, and so that was the first encounter I ever had. And obviously the next day he came for the interview, and we hired him from that day on. So that was my first meeting with Jimi.
What were the earliest years with him like?
Well, so Jimi had just come back from Europe, obviously Poland with Brzezina, and also had spent some time in the Beaujolais region. So he had worked in making wine in the Beaujolais region. So he was talking a lot about his prior experience, but he was just so eager to learn everything. And we were a very small team. Essentially, it was Jimi and I that made all the wine at Wollackenzie. That was it. So obviously he was doing all the work, and we were both doing all the work that needed to be done. So the first year, I think he just threw himself full blast into every aspect of winemaking, because he was involved in everything from the lab to cleaning the tanks to making wine and tasting and topping barrels and bottling and the whole thing.
What was the Oregon wine industry that Jimi came into like?
What year? Jimi came to Wollackenzie in 2008, I think. Do you have some data anywhere?
Would have been 98?
98, as I said 2008, sorry, 98. Yeah. Shoot. So, I mean, obviously, I started at Wollackenzie in 1992, and 1995 was our first vintage. And I think it was either 97 or 98 that Jimi came on board at Wollackenzie. It was probably 97. Anyway, I don't recall exactly the date. But that industry at the time was still very small, very much growing. We were in that phase of the history, which is what I'd like to call one of the second phase of the history. After the pioneer, there were a lot of people that showed up to Oregon to make wine with the intent of making the greatest wine possible, first creating an estate vineyard and then making wine from that estate. So if you think about Beaufrere, Christum, Archery Summit, Wollackenzie, all of those properties were designed on the estate concept. So we first started planting our vineyards, and then we made wine. So that's what I think Jimi came right in the middle of.
What impact did Brooks under Jimi have on the Oregon wine industry?
What impact did Brooks under Jimi have? Jimi was just so vivacious and so vibrant and so fun. I think it was just wonderful for all of us to see him succeed and becoming his own brand. At the same time, I think from the outside he made some great connection with a few wholesalers that just thought that he was doing something really unique and special. So I'm not sure if any of us have a dramatic impact on the whole industry, but certainly he was a great part of it, and was on the path to creating something quite special.
Can you talk about the days leading up to and after Jimi's death? Can you tell it from kind of beginning to end?
Jimi passed on September 4th, and that's my birthday. So that was obviously a very challenging day. Sorry. But the day before, I just remember the last nice time that we had together, which was this trip to Seattle, where we actually spent 2 days together, just in a car most of the time, and then selling wine and just having a fun time during dinners and so on. So this is my greatest time before memory. And then after, of course, I think all of us rallied around Janie to help her out, to make sure that the wines were going to be taken care of. But this was making wine under those conditions was the least we can do, and certainly the easiest thing we had to do. It was it's sink or swim. I mean, you just do it. It was no big deal.
How did you become involved in helping?
Well, again, as I said, it was an obvious that, unfortunate passing in early September in one of the warmest vintage we had. So the grapes were almost ready to be picked. So again, there was no thinking twice about it. Everybody just kind of said, of course, we'll take care of your grapes, kind of thing. So that was a natural decision.
What did you hope to accomplish with the 2004 Brooks harvest?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when you put in those situations, I'm not sure if you think about what you're going to accomplish other than just kind of, coping with the day-to-day activity and just making sure that the grapes that Jimi had committed to would make a great wine that, everybody would be proud of in his memory and in his honor, and obviously going forward towards Pascal and everything that could be left as a legacy. So, again, I think, in those moments, you don't really think about the future. You just kind of get nailed down to the day-to-day activity, and you do the very best job you can.
Do you think that would the same scenario be possible today, just as it was in 2004?
I think so. I think, again, the conviviality of Oregon is such that if somebody would be in such need as Janie was, or Brooks wine was, that people would rally. Yeah, absolutely.
What was it like whenever you met Janie?
So I had met Janie before Jimi's passing, and so we just knew each other a little bit, but not as well after. Obviously, she's become a wonderful part of the Oregon wine industry. I think she's, a lot of us probably, gave her the advice that, hey, this is not your journey, potentially. You have family and husband and friends and kids and all those things that, you probably need to think about. And she had this mission that at first she was going to continue carrying the torch, and she's done an amazing job, and she's become just a wonderful asset of the industry. And now she's really passionate about wine, about the Oregon wine industry, the Willamette Valley. Obviously still passionate about carrying Jimi's legacy, but it's no longer Jimi's, it's hers. She's done an amazing job for, hopefully Pascal at some point will want to be also part of the whole working aspect. He's been intricate part at times during this upbringing, but time will tell. But Janie has created a force that is, to be admired.
How has the Oregon wine industry changed since 2004?
Again, probably similar answer that I gave you earlier. Just a lot of growth, a lot of wonderful thing happened since 2004. Certainly about the acknowledgement that the Oregon wine industry and the Willamette in particular is a force to be dealt with.
During this time, did you still think Brooks Winery would still be around in 2017?
Again, as I said at first, when Janie started, I'm not sure if she even thought if Brooks was going to be around for that long. I'm not quite sure where her mind was. But that was never a question I asked myself in 2004. There was a decision that was made to go forward, and going forward was the only good option, or the only decision that was made that was positive. And so yeah, I wasn't thinking about whether Brooks Wines was going to be there or not. It was, again, dealing with the day-to-day activity at that time. In retrospect, I think that certainly Janie has done an amazing job of creating a brand that is really meaningful, that makes fantastic wines and has a great story behind, and she's created a great environment with a new winery that is spectacular. So I think, again, this has all been very, very, very positive.
What's your favorite memory of Jimi?
Having lunch with him was probably the most exciting. When we were both at Willackenzie, we had a very small group of us working. When you put everybody together, it was 5 of us, and so we cooked lunch for each other every day. So you know 5 working days in the week, and so instead of cooking your lunch 5 days, you only had to cook lunch once, but you cooked it for 5, and the rest of the time you ate with everybody else. And so Jimi was a wonderful cook and really had a good talent with improvising things with all the different meats that he liked, and so we had a wonderful time at lunchtime when he was cooking, and hopefully when I was cooking too.
What's your favorite memory of Jimi and Pascal together?
It's just, to me, the memory is just looking at both of their faces, and when you see Pascal, you see Jimi, just the round face, the round smile, the beautiful smile. So to me, just seeing those two faces together is one of the great things that I like to remember about both of them.
Why does the Jimi Brooks story resonate so much with people?
Well, I think it's, it's Jimi. He was just greater than life. He had amazing ability to talk about every subject, and most people were intimidated by his physics at first, because he was a very impressive football player, and didn't think that behind all this muscles were such a delicate and wonderful brain. So he was just somebody that you really enjoy having a conversation with. So he made a lot of great friends, and I think that's why his legacy carries on.